Alright, everyone. Now we are talking about one of the most important structures in the cell, the nucleus. Think of the nucleus as the control center or command hub of the cell. It is the place where all the critical decisions are made because it stores the cell's DNA. The instructions that control everything the cell does, from growth to metabolism to specialization. Without the nucleus, the cell would have no direction, no game plan. So let's start with some basics. Inside the nucleus, you will find the nuclear genome, which is the DNA containing all the genetic information for the cell. Interestingly, the size of this genome can vary widely among plants. For example, Arabidopsis thaliana, a small flowering plant often used in research, has a relatively tiny genome with about 120 million base pairs. On the other hand, certain lily species can have genomes over 100 billion base pairs. That's an incredible range, don't you think? So now let's look at the structure of the nucleus. It's surrounded by something called nuclear envelope, which is like a double-layered wall protecting everything inside. Between these two layers is a space called perinuclear space. But the nuclear envelope isn't a completely sealed barrier. It has doors called nuclear pores. These pores are fascinating. They are made up of more than 100 proteins arranged in an octagonal shape and act like security gates, allowing molecules like ribosomal subunits and macromolecules to move in and out. But here's the kicker. Moving materials through these gates isn't free. It requires energy, specifically ATP, and only molecules with the right key, called a nuclear localization signal, can pass through. Now let's zoom in on what's inside the nucleus. DNA organization. The DNA in the nucleus is incredibly long, millions of times longer than the nucleus itself. To fit, it's tightly packed with proteins to form something called chromatin. Imagine you have a really long rope and you need to fit it into a tiny box. What do? You coil it tightly around pegs. That's exactly what this cell does, wrapping DNA around groups of 8 proteins called histones, forming structures called nucleosomes. Under a microscope, these look like beads on a string. There are two types of chromatin. Heterochromatin is tightly packed and inactive. It's like the part of the library where books are stored but not read. Euchromatin, on the other hand, is loosely packed and active. This is where the cell is reading the DNA and using it for transcription. And during cell division, the chromatin condenses even further into thick fibers, eventually forming the tightly packed chromosomes you might remember from mitosis. Now let's talk about a specific part of the nucleus, the nucleolus. This is the dense, dark region inside the nucleus where ribosomes are made. Ribosomes are essential because they are the cell's protein factories. The nucleolus contains genes for ribosomal RNA or rRNA, which forms the core of the ribosomes. Here is how it works. The nucleolus assembles ribosome subunits, the large and small pieces that make up a ribosome. These subunits then exit the nucleus through the nuclear pores, come together in the cytoplasm, and get to work making proteins. Pretty efficient, right? To help you visualize all this, let me give you a few analogies. The nucleus is like the CEO's office in a company. It's where all the decisions are made. The nuclear envelope is like the walls of the office, and the nuclear pores are the doors controlling who can enter and leave. And ribosomes are like factories on the production floor, taking the CEO's instructions in the form of RNA and turning them into products or proteins. Chromatin and nucleosomes, they are like taking a really long rope or DNA and coiling it tightly around pegs or histones to fit into a small box, the nucleus. So, what are the key functions of the nucleus? First, it stores and protects the cell's genetic material, DNA, which is really precious, and the nucleus keeps it safe. Second, it controls everything the cell does by regulating which genes are turned on or off. Third, inside the nucleus produces ribosomes, which are essential for making proteins. And finally, the nuclear pores ensures that molecules like RNA and ribosomes can move in and out of the nucleus as needed. The nucleus really is the cell's ultimate command center, and without it, life wouldn't be possible. Ready to dive deeper into how nucleus works with other parts of the cell? Let's keep going.